Today we're focusing on Ed5 publishing, data publishing errors.
We spent a lot of time over the past, I don't know, month and a half talking about, you know, integrating PowerSchool with your Ed5 ODS, right? And making sure that connection happens so that the PowerSchool data can, move from from the Oracle database up to your Ed5 ODS. And that was all the work we did with the keys and the secrets and testing the connections and maybe sometimes holding your nose or your mouth the right way to make sure it worked right and you were able to get a successful connection. So that's the first half of the battle. The second half of the battle is what we're starting to shift into now. And it's what we're calling dependencies and errors. So I think, maybe just kind of a level set on how things were and how things are currently with Enrich versus what the future with Ed5 in terms of data submission will look like would be helpful. So, with Enrich, basically what happens is the Enrich central server sends a series of SQL queries against your Oracle database, right? And it pulls back all the data that fits the select criteria of that query, right? And it just pulls it all in, sends it all up to SEDE, and then once the data gets to SEDE, it gets sent through a validation system, and that's where you get your DQR reports. And DQR will tell you, hey, you're missing a last name here. The student doesn't have a state ID. You're using a course, one of your schools is using a course number that's no longer active, things along those lines. So, what happens then in best case scenario is, you have your schools and people in the district that are looking at those DQR errors. They make the corrections over here in PowerSchool, and the next time that those Oracle queries go up and grab your data, send it back up to SEDE, that the data is cleaner now, and those DQR errors go away. So that's what we're used to, and that's generally not the way it happens in a lot of other states. Most of the data submissions in other states in the US, right? What happens is that they open a data collection, right? They say, hey, we need these pieces of data for reporting, and LEAs or districts somehow ship the data up. Sometimes it's through Ed5, sometimes it's through flat file exchange, and there's a multitude of different ways that they get the data up to the state agency. But what happens is the state agency has something that's like DQR that sits right there on the data submission side. And if there's errors in the data, like the student doesn't have a state ID, or this course code isn't legit anymore, what happens is it says we're actually not going to accept that record. You're going to have to fix it and send it back up to the state agency before it gets used for reporting or accountability or funding, whatever it is, right? So that's the practice across the rest of the United States. And South Carolina's been really distinct in a lot of ways for a long time. And the architecture that we've chosen for data collection and submission has allowed the data to come in, and we take a look at it and then say, hey, this is what seems to be off. Can you correct this? And there's a lot of efficiency there, right? We've done a lot of things with validation and support that I think have made a difference in data quality across the state. So anyway, that's the way the world works right now. So the change that's happening with the data submission through Ed5, what your Ed5 ODS is actually going to do is kind of similar to what I described as what most other states do. When the data from PowerSchool moves through the Ed5 API to your ODS checks for things like referential integrity, right? Like, so are you trying to send me an attendance record for a student that doesn't exist? A student that maybe got deleted out of your Oracle database, or a student that, you know, has a entry date that's after the day of this attendance record you're trying to send up there. And it checks in if it says that, hey, this doesn't seem right, or this can't exist. What happens is it ships an error message back down to PowerSchool and says, hey, PowerSchool, we're not taking this record for some reason, right? And we'll get into the reasons here in a little while. But so what that means is your districts most likely are going to have a big subset of data, not a big subset, a subset of data, a subset of your PowerSchool records that attempt to publish to your district ODS, but the ODS says no, we can't take those records until they're adjusted. Either, you know, send us the student record first and then we'll take the attendance, or if the student record is rejected by the ODS, it'll say, hey, you actually need a unique ID for the student before the ODS will accept it. And so that's kind of the focus that we're shifting into now is, hey, what are these, we're calling them dependencies and errors. There's some nuance there. There's actually in PowerSchool, they do some checks before the data is even sent to the ODS. And if the PowerSchool checks say, hey, there's no way that data is going to land in the ODS, what they do is they hold the record as a dependency within PowerSchool and give you a message that says, hey, we're not even going to send that to the ODS because we know it's not going to land for this specific reason, right? And so, you know, and we'll get into the nuance between a dependency and an error, you know, eventually as we continue this conversation. But, you know, at this point, just realize that, you know, there's going to be records that exist in PowerSchool that don't make it up to your district ODS so that we can pull it for reporting, for funding, for accountability, and things like that. So PowerSchool's developed some tools that are useful, and honestly, most districts, most LEAs across the United States, this is what they have to, what we're going to show you today is this is what they have to support themselves through addressing these errors and dependencies, you know, so that they can get the correct data up to the state agency for reporting. You know, and considering this is going to be a kind of sea change for South Carolina, our team has decided that, hey, let's start focusing on the educational component of this first, and then we're going to move into a comprehensive support model where we kind of teach everyone, you know, how to kind of diagnose and resolve these errors and dependencies. And we're I think we're right in the midst of developing some new tools, some new resources, some new support mechanisms for helping y'all through the error and dependency diagnosis and resolution. And so I guess that's the focus that we're beginning today, right? You know, in the past we said, hey, you know, all those errors and dependencies, just don't focus on them right now. We're going to talk about those later. And so, you know, today and extending over the next, I don't know, probably 5 or 6 months, this is the focus that we're going to have as a team within ORDA and as a team within South Carolina at the districts. And, you know, we brought in our partners with Level Data and Education Analytics to also help. So it's going to be a team effort, and, you know, it begins now.
The question that Tricia just asked is, oh, let's see, she had a couple in there. Let's see. When we have questions about an error, who should we contact? So that's a little bit nuanced to answer. I could just give you an email address, but actually we have been thinking really hard about that, and we have a few resources. We actually have a resource in development Brett's going to talk to us about in a bit here that will probably be your first stop, that we hope is going to be really great for you, and that he's been working hard on. We've all been working hard on the pieces of that. And one of the things that also Blythe has been really focusing on is a form that you guys can also use in certain situations. So we're going to it's going to be a little bit of help with sort of triage of like, okay, if this, then, go here kind of thing for you. But also certainly our team is here to help, and that's why we're here today. So the next question, that we have here is what time does it start? So we'll get into the nitty gritty. Those of you who've signed up for a regional, most of you have probably at least received like an email. If you haven't yet, you will soon. We've had to make some decisions about things like, the schedule before we send it out and whatnot to kind of finalize. So I'll be showing you the schedule at a glance today, and you should be receiving an email really soon with details about your location, start time, lunch, that kind of thing. So all that's coming. Wyatt mentioned this, but I just wanted to kind of pause to give everybody out there, all of our district PowerSchool folks, a big shout out, because you guys did a great job integrating. All of these steps right here are what everybody completed to get integrated. We have 100% in that 2 weeks. We got 100% of districts pushing some data to their ODS. We realize and fully expected that not all of the data would be landing there immediately, but you've taken these steps to integrate. So great job to all of you. Okay, so we will start a little bit with our workshops, just sharing with you what we're going to do there before we look at I wanted to pull up the dashboard and just kind of walk through a few things today, but I know a lot of you have questions about the workshops, which will be a great way for you to learn about errors. So these are the dates. Newberry is full, sorry. So if you haven't quite signed up yet, Newberry is full. That one filled up pretty quickly, but we still have plenty of slots for Pickens, Horry, and Charleston, and we want everybody. We want to see everybody there. So we're looking at that roster, and if we don't see your district represented, you'll probably get an email and say, hey, from somebody on our team saying, hey, how can we help you get registered? What do you need? So just we encourage you to go ahead and do that so you can get the location that you want. So I'm going to break away from these slides real quick and show you an agenda at a glance. We've been working on this. It's certainly subject to some change, and there's a lot more behind it, a lot more detail than what I'll show you today. But if you're curious as to what you'll be doing there, this can also, I think, spur some conversation, hopefully, for today. So, and Brett, I think in this, there's a piece where he's going to share a little bit about what he's been working on to help you guys with, like I said, that first guide or manual that you would go to when you encounter an error to kind of figure out what's the next step. So this is our workshop agenda at a glance. So these red headings here are sort of the big chunks. We are, like I said, going to send you out an email with a quick little, well, I say quick, it shouldn't take that long, but a basic checklist of things that we'd like for you to think about before you come and do. So we'll send that out soon. Nothing hard or earth-shattering probably, but just to make sure that you come super prepared, because we want this to be really interactive. It's not going to be a sit and get. There will certainly be some preliminary information provided up front, but we want you to walk out of there having resolved errors. So that's part of it, and feeling a lot more confident doing that on your own. We have an Eat the Frog section at the beginning. We know none of us thinks that code set mapping is fun, but we've told you that you could hold on that part. Some of you went ahead and just kind of did it just to have a place for your data to land, and some of you are waiting, and that's fine. So we're gonna, PowerSchool has actually been working on and is still working on updating some documentation to assist with that. And we just have a few steps. When we get there, we're going to be focusing on the data publishing categories that you see here. So for the morning session, it's going to become a little bit more and more interactive as the day goes on. We're going to give you some information about sort of the what, why, and how of EdFi in South Carolina. We know we have some folks for whom this is all still very new. You're like, what is EdFi? I don't even know still. So this, it takes a minute to talk about that. So this is a great place to be if you're feeling that way. Some useful terminology. We have some of that on our website, but we can talk about it a bit more at the workshop as well. And we'll have some partners there who can also help us share some details about overview and infrastructure, and we can talk about that too, but we're fortunate that we're going to have representation, for example, from Education Analytics, and they can also add some additional information about that. And I think Wyatt did a great job helping kind of orient us about what we mean by errors and data quality, and but we'll definitely talk a little bit about that at the workshop too. And then we'll get into some some specifics. So we'll take a glance at the dashboard today, but you'll get a more in-depth guided tour at the workshop. So what's the anatomy of your dashboard? There are really actually quite a few places you can go. Like there are a lot of paths you can take to investigating an error. So you'll have some more time to simmer over that and be interactive and with that tour and doing that in your PowerSchool instance. We're going to have level data share about errors, and we're going to kind of learn about what do we mean by a level 1 error, level 2 error. And then we're going to have some, after a break, we'll have some guided interaction. So we have a few steps that we're going to walk you guys through so you can actually start digging in and resolving some errors. And I'm going to turn it over to Brett for a second, because one of the things here that we have in these steps is that we're going to ask you guys to try to find those errors in an error resolution guide that is still a little bit under construction, but that we'll have for you at the workshop. So yeah, Brett, I have a couple screenshots in over here that might give them an idea.
Right. Hey, y'all. So I just want to appreciate everyone from the district's work and help that they've given us actually in getting a lot of this set up. When I joined the team about 6 months ago, we started a lot of these one-on-one sessions with districts to help identify errors and help look for resolutions in those. And so over these past 6 months, I've been collecting a lot of these, looking through, and we're coming up with this. It's our D&E dependency and error resolution manual. And so for any of those who've kind of looked at our SIS manual that we have on our website, it's going to be just like that, where, you know, you're going to go in, you're going to look and see if this error you're having has already been solved, already been resolved. So like it's going to be something like this. Just on the page, you'll see, you know, the tables, you'll see the names, you'll see, you know, this is our test server Bulldog, but, you know, you'll have your own on there. You have the PowerSchool case number in case, you know, you need to get in contact with them about that. You'll see the error message, and then we'll have the screenshot showing you the error in your dashboard along with the error with the JSON. And then from there, you'll see what are the resolution steps. So looking at this one right here, you see the organization info errors on class period records. So we see the error message says, you know, invalid model state, request class period meeting times. All right, well, we got this one solved. What you need to do, you need to check all bell schedules and make sure period is flagged as counts for daily attendance. Once you do, go back and publish your organization organization infos again, and all those errors will clear up. So, you know, it's just, you do a quick search, see if it's in there. If it is, you got it, boom, you're done. But if you actually find your own resolution for it, that was the form that Wendy mentioned earlier. So one of our other teammates, Blythe, has been working on this form. And what it is for, this isn't for if you have a ticketing question or you have an error that you can't solve. There's a whole separate submission for that. But this is in case, because some of y'all really like to dig in there, plug in. I was very impressed by the districts that I worked with on some of these one-on-ones, who y'all were picking in, you're finding some things, you're like, oh, I found this over here, this looks really good. And so sometimes y'all might also find a good resolution to some of these errors. So also you have this form to go into. You can provide any screenshots, you can provide any descriptions that you would like, and then you can also help keep building on to this manual here. So it's not just like us putting this out, it's also more of a collaboration from the entire state to get this out and get helpful for everyone. So, you know, this is currently in production right now. I hope to have this fully out by our first workshop in Pickens. And so, you know, it's going to be always be updating, always anytime anything news comes. So, you know, keep checking with that there. It's going to be right there on our SIS documents homepage. And I really hope that this is actually going to bring a lot of help and support to the districts.
Yes, thank you, Brett. I'm super excited about that too. I think it's going to be really very, very helpful. And I also second everything that you said about how impressive it is that some people have really started to dig in.
Yeah, I'd like to add that there's in these kind of one-on-one sessions and just talking with y'all from time to time, there's a lot of commonalities in these EdFi dependencies and errors, right? So a lot of y'all have the same dependency, the same error, and a lot of times it's the same resolution to get it fixed. So we need to think of different ways that we can encourage, joint problem solving and joint sharing of resources. And, what Brett and the team are developing here is kind of the first step there, right? Let's get a catalog of everything that we've seen resolved and publish it and continue building content for it so that the next you and the district has something comprehensive they can look at when, they start up the publishing for the next year after you retire, move on to a different job. And, they say, oh, what are all these errors? And right, they can go and just search through a document, search through, I don't know, whatever resource that we as a state decide to create for support, that they can search through it and find answers without, having to wait on Wyatt to return an email or, PowerSchool to diagnose a ticket and provide a response. So it's I think that there's going to be a lot of benefits from us approaching this as a group rather than independently.
For sure. For sure. I could not agree more. And kind of speaking of, I know Brett had some nice screenshots in there of what you might see when you're digging into those. Let's take a quick look over at this dashboard that everybody's started to become pretty familiar with. So again, in the workshop, what you see here all the way through staff associations is going to be the focus, because we really thought very carefully, through time and to make it interactive such that you are able to republish and, kind of see the results of having solved some errors. We that seems to make sense. So we're going to take a look at just what that dashboard looks like. We'll make sure we'll have time for questions right after this. So I won't take a super long time, but just, again, this is not going to be in the depth of, oh, hold on. Let me stop sharing for just a second and re-sign in. Right. So I'm going to make sure I'm in the district office just so we can see a little bit more. So everyone should have this link over in under the data exchange section that takes you directly to your dashboard. If you don't, that's a customizations thing probably, but I think so far everyone seemed to have pretty smooth sailing with making sure that they have that link this year. So that's great. Each week, maybe on a particular day at a particular time that works for you, come in here, click Run Now for your descriptors, okay, common codes, and Run Now for state courses. Each of those takes about 3 minutes to download. If it takes a whole lot longer, that could be something to reach out on, but again, so far this year, that seems to have gone really smoothly. You have to do that first, as you know, and then after that, in the state of South Carolina, the way we republish is don't hit Run All, just don't hit Run All, okay? You're gonna hit Run Now for each category, okay? The best practice that we will follow is we're gonna hit Run Now and do one category at a time. And you can navigate away from that screen. You can, go check your email, come back to it, leave it open, close it, whatever, come hit the next one. But that's the best way to do it. That way you have control over, knowing what has published. And then really, you could look at this processing category. For a while. We said, look at this and make sure it's gone back to 0. Probably even better is to look at publishing. And when publishing has gone back to 0, then hit the next one. But basically, you want to give one category sort of long enough to make it most of the way through so that it makes sense. It's done as much as it can to then try to publish the next one. And that way, what that can avoid is getting things hung up in dependency that really don't need to be, and that for some reason kind of get stuck there. So that's part of holding your face in the right way, right? So one at a time is best. Then what you're going to do is, if you see that red button, okay, that's something that Jason was created for. It was sent to the API, and then it was not allowed to land in your ODS. Okay, so it was rejected. So let's take a look here at the errors. You notice we have 5 here for organization info. So I'm going to click on this button. Some of you have already done this in your dashboards, and you've tried to sort of dig in and start to see what's there. We're going to take a look at just this example here today before we do too many questions. And then you'll see this screen that gives you 2 drop downs. The first says choose category. So these are kind of interesting. I know that I don't have dependencies here. I would like to look at errors, so I'm probably going to click that. If I wanted to, I could click this summary, which can be interesting, especially if you want to see sort of the breakdown of errors and dependencies across schools in your district. Okay, so I'm going to click errors because that's just what I want to look at. And then for the data view, typically what you'll have, so each of those PowerSchool categories basically represents these other, like sort of a group of categories. So Ed5 resources or different Ed5 tables. So in this case, those can be referred to as locations, class periods, and programs. So let's just pick the top one. Okay, I don't see anything there. The first thing I'm going to do is clear my cache just in case that gives me anything different. It doesn't. Okay, so nothing there to see. Class periods. Clear my cache. Nothing there to see. And the reason you want to clear your cache is because if you have just published again, which if you're doing it each week, you know, maybe you just republished. So it's possible that you're looking at an old view and you just kind of need to clear the data out of there. So, all right, programs, clear cache. Well, I know I had 5 errors. That looks right. So for these, I happen to know, if I didn't know this, I could look in the resource that Brett was just talking about, that guide. But I happen to know that, okay, well, these actually are probably some sort of false negative right now, because these are one of the things that I think is going to be in that guide. Tell me if I'm wrong, Brett, is, you know, anything that we know of where there might be a fix coming through. Okay, so we actually have some development coming through that should cause these things to publish, I think. So I'm not going to worry about those right now.
You're right, because we're also, if you see online, we're also working on these development ticket trackers for anything that, you know, we've submitted to PowerSchool, any change requests or any fixes as well. And so that way too, you can see, like, even before PowerSchool releases any of their release notes, you can see where the ticket is in development. And that's one of the things we've been really working on, is that transparency and getting that schedule set to know when these error resolutions and tickets are coming out. Because sometimes, I mean, it takes a good little bit for PowerSchool sometimes. Like, it could be up to 3 months before you even see the ticket like be released. And so that way we just want to have that transparency and to see, okay, well, you know, I submitted this error and, you know, back in September, like, when am I going to see it? Okay, well, I can see, like, you know, it's going to be coming out for the, you know, late November release. And so we just want to have that on there too. So, like, it helps y'all know, like, you know, not to be stressed about it, but also just know, like, okay, well, I'm being heard, it's being worked on, and so feeling comfortable with that.
And exactly. And I'm glad you mentioned the ticket tracker, because that actually already is public, right? And we're constantly updating it if we find something. So forgive us if it takes a second to pop it in there. But typically we would have already sent that ticket before it goes into the tracker, because we have to be able to sort of synthesize the information to tell you, okay, here's what we submitted. So there's like this whole sort of flow of events that happens even before it appears there for you. But we actually have a few that are already, I don't know if this one's in there. We could check. I can show you where it is. But one other interesting thing to notice here, and some of you have asked about this, so I'll go ahead and tell you. See how it says message detail, message removed, retry publishing. So that's that purge that PowerSchool does every so often. So the way to get that message to reappear is to republish. Okay, so we could try that. We could say, oh, I wish I could see the error message. So even though we know what these are about, just to see it, we'll go back and just do that so you can see if it changes. Okay, so I'm just gonna, and by the way, at this point in time, I can just publish changes, right? I don't really have to publish all. For most of these, you know, especially like this first one, organization info, probably wouldn't hurt to hit publish all, but there's really no need for me to. I can either, well, and actually publish changes might not. Let's do retry. Let's just do retry errors. Let's do that, because we just want the message to reappear. And you guys know by now when it says successfully completed, I think that just means like it started. So we refresh. Okay, and you'll notice we have those 5 errors in processing now. So my button is no longer red, errors is 0. So we wait a second.
I feel like we should do this like one of those cooking shows, you know, where the chef makes something in the pan and like opens the oven and puts it in and then pulls out like the same dish that's already finished.
Right. Yeah, they like do have a little clock and it's like, no, it's done. Yeah, we need a video like that. Yeah, otherwise it could be pretty painful. Fortunately, we only have 5 right here. So let's see, let's keep refreshing and see. That's why I picked that one. I was like, and this is the other thing, while we're waiting, oh look, see, it's already moved past dependency. So it got past that first layer of checkpoints that PowerSchool have, whatever business rules. Now it's in publishing. So it's JSON's being generated so that it can be sent to the API. Another reason, aside from just the fact that I thought it would be quicker for the purposes of this webinar, another reason to start right at the top is because that's best practice. So like we want to start, it just makes sense. If you think about how the publishing is working, it makes sense because most of these are dependent on something above them for the most part, then to start at the top, it's going to be better. We're going to get a more accurate view of what's going on and more accurate errors and dependencies. Again, if you hit run now, you might get some stuff hung up in dependency, you end up having to republish. So we don't really want to do that. All right, I'm going to refresh one more time. Okay, so it's still working on that. Okay, all right, so I still have my 5 errors. I didn't do anything to fix them, right? So that's perfectly expected. But what I was wanting to do is to get my error messages back. Okay, so I didn't try to fix them. Remember that. So if anyone's like, oh no, they're still there. We know they're still there. Okay. Programs. Let me clear. Notice it still says that. So let's clear cache. There they are. Okay. So that you'll notice that again, that's a good example of why you need to clear your cache, because you might just see what you just saw, right? Kind of like if you post something on your website or something and you're like, I just changed it, but it looks like it did. So it's the same thing. So you'll notice here, and most of the errors I think we end up seeing are like 400 errors. If you see 409s, I will say sometimes if you're investigating those, if you kind of try, like if you have a bunch of 409s that are the same, that's another thing that happens sometimes with the publish all. Try just to push them all again, and sometimes a lot of them will clear. But 400, this says validation of program failed, program name property is part of the primary key, and therefore its value cannot contain leading or trailing white space. Okay, again, we have something and one of our developments coming through should make that a non-issue. And same thing with this one, program name is required, that we know will be fixed, but you can see how you can get the message to reappear. Okay, so I'm gonna navigate away. I know that's just like a quick, that's not all the things, but that's just sort of a quick, of just a quick few basics about getting started, monitoring your errors, getting in that habit of making sure things are fresh, that you're looking at something that's real, that's fresh. That's kind of like square one. Because if you're not doing that, then you're just going to spin your wheels over something that is old, or, actually if you just republish something else, like maybe it would be different. So that's, I think, maybe step 1 before your error resolution workshop. The last thing we wanted to do is give you guys an opportunity to so we'll kind of open it up for questions. And for those who like this sort of thing, we have a little sheet here that I'll put a link to in the chat. You can just use the chat. You can open your mic here in a second, but feel free. Here, I'm going to put district questions. We always like to have a record of your questions too sometimes, because it helps us do things like build out Q&As and just kind of, it makes them a little bit more like in your face at times, like something that we can kind of hold on to and come back to. And sometimes we chew on it and we come up with a better way to explain what the answer is, but we're happy to try on the fly as well right now. So anyway, feel free to hop in there. I have an example there. How do I know if I have Ed5 publishing errors? So, it's a kind of easy one, like you have a red button, but we'll talk more about it in the workshop. So I will stop sharing this, and as those pop up, I might just sort of pull some. Wyatt, do we have any in the chat that we need to go ahead and address out loud?
Let me double check. So there was some discussion about having last year's ODS data push and PowerSchool and this year's active at the same time. We
Gotcha.
expected that to work, and what we found was that especially for large districts that the two links, right? One is for the previous year ODS and one is for the current, that they actually touch the same publishing tables in your Oracle database. And so what happens then is that when PowerSchool is attempting to like republish errors, you go in and press run now or publish changes or whatever, and you're doing that on both profiles, that there's some resource contention problems that start to surface, you know, when two different profiles are attempting to access the same tables, right? There's some locking and blocking issues, and what that does is just slow down the whole process altogether. So after learning that, you know, I'm scratching my head. I'm like, well, you know, how do we want to approach publishing changes for the previous year ODS, right? So in terms of state reporting and compliance and federal reporting, you know, at the end of the school year, whatever it is, June 14th or 15th, whatever data exists there is what we'll use for reporting. However, there's longitudinal data warehouses being built off of your ODS for your district's benefit, right? And so I think it would make sense, and I'd be interested to know why it wouldn't, but I think it would make sense for you know, error corrections, changes in PowerSchool development that allow data to be transferred that were previously held in dependency, things like that. I feel like those data should also move to the previous year ODS or maybe 2 years back, right? And that'll ensure that, or at least promote data quality in your longitudinal data warehouse, you know, going forward in time. So I don't know. It's just a problem that we haven't had to solve in South Carolina before, and so we're thinking through how best to approach it.
Yeah, that's a good question. It's a really good question.
Yeah, we're all learning, right?
For sure, every day. Okay, so we have a good comment. Most of my current dependencies and errors are tied to one or both of my summer programs. Okay, so we actually can help with that. I think what we're realizing, we had a good timeline sorted out, but we're still refining it a bit. And so it's possible that when we sent over a list, that due to sort of how we're trying to be super proactive, but it may be in some cases the summer programs or one of your summer programs might not have been in how the ODS was seated for your district. So if that's the case, just let us know. You can actually reach out to our team or to our PowerSchool email address. We might be able to help you go ahead and get that squared away. And then the next time you publish, this should be accounted for. Unless there's some other reason other than just it not being a school in the ODS. And I'll put that PowerSchool email address. If you send to that, some of you might send to like me or to Wyatt or Brett or Blythe, and that's fine. But if you send it to that PowerSchool email address, that's great because we all check it as regularly as we can. It's just sometimes that's faster. Can
I share the the documentation PowerSchool created?
Oh yeah, that would be really helpful, I bet.
And
they're still updating it based on feedback. So they've been like to make it South Carolina specific. And
yeah, this was released, I think, Monday. So there's a whole section here. I got here, let's see, you can click when you're in a server, if you click that what is it, the question mark button and go to state reporting help, it'll take you to this page, or you know, here's the link if you want that. Copy and let's see where it's chat, paste. looking. And so here they created like a whole section with that describes the different categories and resources, right? And I honestly haven't had a lot of time to spend looking through here yet, but I think it starts to get pretty comprehensive. And there's different submenus, right? That tells you, you know, which records are picked to publish. It gives you the mapping over here from PowerSchool to the EdFi element, as well as the description and the data type, which I think is really neat. Let's see, what else is here? Tells you the categories of descriptors. I don't know. I think it's neat that they're beginning to think about what like comprehensive documentation about that publishing dashboard should look like. And if y'all have comments, suggestions, I think you could just enter them as a support case with PowerSchool, and we'll talk about it with our with Vet Wolf, who's the state reporting and compliance manager for South Carolina. But they're looking for feedback. They're looking for ways to improve this, and I think it's a pretty neat resource.
I agree. I was excited to see all of that. There are a couple of good questions popping up about types of errors and that I think a lot of people are probably seeing. So one was a lot of our errors are with programs and not schools. Is there something in the workshop with those? Yes, that one should be actually in the coming weeks, I think. They should start to clear out if you're seeing a lot having to do with programs, work-based learning, special programs, that kind of thing. I think some CTE as well. There's another one, organizational calendars are by far our category with the most errors, and it's the message is validation of calendar date failed. Calendar events requires at least one object in the collection. So we have, this one might take a little longer, I think, but yes, we're aware of that one. Wyatt, how much do you want to, like,
Yeah,
I don't know.
there's actually a fix for that one that came out last week, but the fix actually caused more problems. So the solution that the developers came up with is just to not publish non-in-session days. And so there's a lot of schools and districts out there, I'm not pointing any fingers, but that have terms that begin or end on a Sunday or on a weekend or something, right? And what happens is that because the non-in-session days, like a Saturday or a Sunday, aren't publishing to your ODS, neither are those terms that begin on those Saturdays or Sundays. I think I've got a screenshot of the error. I haven't had a chance. I'm trying to get a like a known error type guide for y'all, and that's next on my documentation list, but it'll look something like this. The dependencies under calendar, and then you choose the grading period, and usually there's like 3 records for it for some reason. Maybe because it's like period sequence 3. I haven't honestly been able to spend much time in it. We just saw the error surface beginning this week. So how I knew that it was because of the days not that are in session not publishing is I went into the calendar for the particular school that this error was associated with, which is just this thing up here, right? And I checked 118 and it was an in-session day. It was like a Thursday. But then I checked 326 and it was a Sunday. So because that Sunday was not in session, the data wasn't publishing, and I went in because this is test server, just marked that Sunday to in session day and then a membership day, and republished the errors, and the data went through. So we talked this over with PowerSchool yesterday, and they're going to rush a fix for us. I'd like to see that out really soon.
Yeah, I think we have, I think it's going like today. I think we have the new mapping for them, and it's, yeah, so.
But yeah, known errors, that's, I think that's gonna be an important one to have. I think there's some stuff going on in attendance still that's, not causing them to publish, and then the programs, need to add that one.
We have one other question here in the sheet too. It says we have a lot of errors showing under student grades and they're from previous years. So error code 400, the request is invalid, model state, request dot grading period reference dot period sequence, unexpected character encountered when parsing value.
Okay. So, I haven't had a chance to really dig into the grades of the transcripts yet. Do me a favor, whoever reported that one, can you actually submit that through a PowerSchool case and let me look at it with Mark Wagner?
Okay, cool.
Sure, why we can do that.
Yeah, that's what they're saying. Thanks,
Thanks for giving me more work to do.
Stephanie. Thanks, Stephanie and Oconee. Okay.
Is that about it for questions, Wendy?
That's it. Yeah, that's it that I'm seeing in the sheet. Let me just do one more pass to make sure I didn't miss anybody.
So we can dismiss everyone.
Yes, you guys ask really good questions. I'm glad that we had this time to kind of start this conversation. I feel like it's very beginning conversation, but it's kind of important to level set with some of this, I think, and talk about those things like known errors and kind of give you guys a peek behind the curtain at what's being worked on to help, and also hopefully you have a few tools to go ahead and get started, and you're not afraid of your dashboard, and you can just sort of go in and start if you feel so inclined. Clicking on that red button and just seeing what you see and clearing the cache and taking a look. If you're not wanting to do that yet, I think that would be a good thing to do, to go ahead and just start looking. At the very least, I think right now, I would say a good step is to get in that habit of just refreshing everything. So each week, stay up to date on your state reporting, try to get oriented a little bit in terms of the resources that are coming out. Someone was kind enough already to put a link to our EdFi in South Carolina webpage, which right now, every so often might have a new resource for use or something that's updated to help you as we get feedback and as we learn more. So I think there was a question. Somebody said, where do we access the PowerSchool EdFi tracking document? It's on that page. So just go to that page, look at the PowerSchool documentation that Wyatt has up on the screen, re-download, republish each week, clear your cache. That's the habit to build right now. Right, if there
So
is...
what should they expect in terms of next, right? So walking into this presentation, they said, well, what's an error in dependency, right? And we said, hey, it's a this, here's how you see them, right? So when they're going through their dashboard and saying, hey, what is this? Why is this an error? Why is this the dependency? What's the next step? To send it to that PowerSchool inbox, and we'll go from there.
I think right now, because we haven't released I think that's probably a good idea, because we haven't released the guide that Brett's really focused on, and we actually do have another sort of preliminary form that some of you may have found, where you can submit if you've solved something. But in most cases right now, I would check the tracker, see, that's a good first place to look right now. It's available. If you don't see it there, and we didn't mention it as something that has an upcoming fix for right now, probably a PowerSchool ticket would be the way to go, I think.
Okay.
But in the future, we'll have more. It won't always just be PowerSchool ticket, but I think right now might not be a bad idea. And you just let us know, and then we can either escalate it or we can say, oh, actually, we can tell you what that is. But
Alrighty.
well, thank you, everybody. We appreciate you and appreciate your presence here today and your questions. And we hope to see all of you at the workshop. There is a lot before we go, let me put a link in the chat in case anybody has not registered. And if you have, you will be getting some information via email soon. We have your registration. So just sit tight and we will see you soon.